Entrepreneurship, especially for women, is brutally lonely. And when you feel like an outsider, you tend to isolate yourself. I literally have been running in survival mode. And the way that I dealt with it is not by stepping toward community. We fill our loneliness by staying busy. And so how do you, if you're somebody who recognizes that I'm a little like Mel, how do you get over that, Jenna?
Hey, everybody. I am Jenna Kutcher, host of the Gold Digger podcast and author of How Are You Really? And I am with one of my dearest friends on planet Earth. Hello, Mel Robbins. Tell me who you are.
Hello, Jenna. I'm Mel Robbins. I'm a best-selling author and soon to be host of the Mel Robbins podcast, which is launching soon.
It's so exciting. So today we're going to be talking about the topic of asking for help, which is actually something really near and dear to Mel and my hearts, specifically in our relationship, but also in business, in community, in all of these things. And I think it's this lesson that we continue to learn over and over and over again. So Mel, what's something that would surprise the audience about asking for help when it comes to you? Is this something that's natural? Is it something that you have to learn? Tell me what it's like in terms of your relationship.
Well, I don't know if it would surprise everybody or not, but I fell into the trap for years and years and years of trying to figure things out on my own. Like changing in secret, launching businesses and not telling my friends, feeling like it would be embarrassing if I went to a weekend seminar thing to learn about funnel marketing. Like I literally felt like because I didn't know, that meant I was stupid. Yeah. And that everybody else had figured it out. And I was sort of embarrassed to ask for help. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know who to ask for help. And one of the greatest changes that I've made in my life is that in the past 2 years, asking for help, the moment I get stuck, has been a huge game changer in terms of growth, ease, learning, community, all of it.
It's really, I love what you just said, because I think this is the part that people miss is a lot of times we think we should ask for help after we've troubleshot and we've tried every option and we've researched and we've done all the things. And I think what you just said is super important. Asking for help the minute you feel that stuck, the minute you feel that urging of like, maybe I'm in over my head. How has it been? Because honestly, when I think about you and the more that I get to know you outside of this weird space we find ourselves in, you were kind of a lone ranger for a long time when it came to the world that we're in. Was that by choice or necessity, or was it just because you didn't have another option?
I didn't know there was an option. Like I was a lone ranger because of two reasons. Number one, I never kind of made a decision consciously that, okay, I'm gonna now jump into personal development. I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna get into speaking. It really was one beautiful, gigantic accident that happened where I don't have any other explanation than to say, sort of like when you hired a college kid to shoot your wedding, and all of a sudden something opened up inside you, and next thing you know, you're on Craigslist buying a camera, and next thing you know, you're shooting like a relative, like all of these things start to snowball. So I never had a community. I was just kind of in the trenches figuring it out. And I think I also had a really scarce mindset. There was so much conversation about how few women there were. And when on the speaking circuit, that when I first started getting paid to speak, which would have been late 2014, I assumed that I was in competition with all the other women. And I also didn't know anybody in the speaking business. And the speaking business seemed to be two different camps. It seemed to be people that were famous or best-selling authors who had, like all that going on, or it were people part of the National Speaking Association, which I wasn't a part of. And so I felt like an outsider. And when you feel like an outsider, you tend to isolate yourself. And when I looked at the community of people in personal development that we are all friends with now, I saw a clique that I didn't belong to. When I looked at people that I admired, whether it was Brene Brown or Glennon Doyle or Elizabeth Gilbert, or just this group of women that were all friends and met, together and through Oprah, I'm like, that's a clique that will never let me in. I'm not smart enough. I'm not an academic. I'm not part of that. And so as I started to rise up in terms of being a speaker, and the tremendous success of the 5-second rule as a self-published author, there's another Lone Ranger thing.
Yep.
It became more and more separate. Like I just saw all the places I didn't belong. And so I didn't even know who to ask for help.
Whoa. That's fascinating. And I think that a lot of people can relate to this in that it's like we see community, but we disqualify ourselves from being a part of it. We like take ourselves out from being a voice or a piece of it. When really it's like if we saw community like a puzzle, we could be the missing puzzle piece, but we see all the likeness and we only see how we don't belong.
Yeah.
Like it's
and,
interesting.
I want to go deeper because I'd love for you to give me advice.
Yeah.
So I see this as a big theme in my life, that I am not a person who I would say has ever had a girl gang. I joined a sorority in college and stayed in it for about a week. Because I started going, I don't think I belong here. I don't like, I feel a little like I just don't feel like this is for me. And I think a lot of it for me was what has to do, Jenna, with the fact that, I always say to my daughters, I'm so happy that don't have a serious relationship in college, because I missed out on girlfriends in high school and in college because I was always in a relationship. And I'm really deeply sad that I have literally one person that I'm close to from high school that's still one of my best friends, and a handful of people from college and law school that I'm still really good friends with, but not like the bonding that I see my daughters getting to do with their high school and college friends, because they weren't consumed with a romantic relationship. And I feel like that separateness has really made me lonely. It's made it 20 times harder to build anything. It and it's a huge miss. It's a huge miss for me. And so how do you, if you're somebody who recognizes that I'm a little like Mel, I would rather stay in at night. I opt out. I get to a big party and I kind of feel uncomfortable. Like, and that's only increased, by the way, with my business growing and the fact that I have a public reputation. And I deeply miss feeling connected to people and want to be part of community. But how do you get over that, Jenna?
Yeah. What's really interesting is, so I had this realization, and I think this could apply to anyone, that for a long time, I was not being or seeking out community because I told myself nobody will understand me. And in saying that, I never gave anyone an invitation to try and understand. Right. So even when people would ask me, like, what do you do for a career? I would just be like, oh, it's kind of confusing. It's on the computer. And like, I do this thing. And I would just end the conversation. I wouldn't even allow for room for follow-up. And when you think about the heart of my book, like it's that difference between like, hey, how are you? Good, busy, fine, kids, to how are you really, where you feel safe enough to answer. It's like giving breath to like, you might not understand, but let me help you. And I feel like when we are lacking community, there's this part in the book that I keep coming back to, where it says, loneliness isn't being in isolation. Loneliness is being surrounded, but not being fully known. And I think for a lot of people, we find ourselves in rooms, whether it's our career or even with our family or church or whatever that is, where we're in this room and we're like, nobody even knows who I really am. But instead of placing the blame on other people and saying, why is nobody asking me how I am really? It's like, how can I help to bridge the gap to help people understand? They might not totally get the things that I do, but it's on me to help them understand more. And I think that happens a lot with girlfriends. Like, do you ever have like someone will ask you a question and you're like, they don't really want to know the answer. Like they're just asking out of formality or niceness. I think we go through life with that. And it's like, even in my friendship with you, it's these like, hey, just checking in texts that make me feel far more connected than being like, oh, I'll just talk to her when I see her again. You know, I think that a lot of times what it sounds like, and I could be totally wrong here, is that in the past, you've unqualified yourself from belonging. And so you've just
Mhm.
stopped even trying to make yourself belong.
Yeah, I think I just like opted out. And that's not true for every area of my life. Like
No, not at all.
I think back to, seasons of my life where our kids were younger and our kids were all in the same rhythm. And
Yep.
so I had this huge group of female friends when our daughters were really young. And we were together all the time because we were at playgroup, or we would see each other at daycare drop off, or then they started in school and everybody's playing town soccer. And so you're standing on the sidelines. It was the most social period of my life. I felt like I was back in college because every Friday, every Saturday, there were barbecues. People were together. It was like a squad of 12 couples and kids all over. It was so much fun. And then middle school hit. And
Yeah.
all the kids go in different directions and play different sports, and everybody starts to get busy. And that's also right when Chris left his restaurant business and I stepped in and did whatever it was going to take
Yeah.
to pay our bills because we were in a financial free fall. And
Yeah.
I literally, from the moment that my kids were in middle school, our daughters who are now, almost graduated from college, I literally have been running in survival mode. And that's also what dropped out, the connection to community, because all my success began in an emergency.
Mm.
And what
Wow.
happens when you are in an emergency is that you're either running so fast or you freeze and you isolate, and you are no longer in the day-to-day rhythm of everybody else that you know. And when
Yep.
people stop seeing you out and about, or people don't see you at the events, that they used to see you at, they stop thinking about inviting you because they assume you're not there. And so it kind of was a slow build, but within about 5 years of that emergency happening financially, I literally had like no social life because I was always on a plane and I was always working. And I can see that and I think this is true with a lot of entrepreneurs, that just because you and I are in the speaking and the media business does not mean it's a different experience if you're running a catering business or a photography business, or you got a retail store, or you're selling products online. Entrepreneurship, especially for women, is brutally lonely.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and there is so much insecurity that you feel because, whatever, a bias, or there's insecurity that you feel because you're selling. There's insecurity that you feel because you're worried that your friends are going to judge you. There's insecurity that you feel because you're not a full-time mom. And so you get it a bazillion different ways. And so I know that even though I'm talking about an acute crisis, a particular type of business, I think most people who are entrepreneurs struggle with loneliness. And the way that I dealt with it is not by stepping toward community, because I had a story that I didn't have any time. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
tired at the end of the day running a business. How do I have time to invest in relationships right now? And we fill our loneliness by staying busy.
Right. And you know what's fascinating, and what I want to urge everyone listening and you to think about, is that never in the history of our lifetime, or even our parents' lifetime, has there been a global slowdown, like a collective moment that the entire world experienced all at once, right? Like, when does that ever happen? And I feel like we are given this incredible opportunity right now, this invitation to move forward in a new way, right? Like I loved COVID in the sense of like nobody was inviting me anywhere, so I didn't have to say no, right? But now I'm like, okay, wait, when they say it takes a village, do I have a village? Like when they say motherhood takes a village or entrepreneurship or marriage or whatever, I think a lot of us are looking around and it's like, we don't have villages, but let's talk about part of why. It's because I think a lot of us are white knuckling things. You talk about being in this place where it was survival mode. That's like white knuckle central, right?
Mhm.
And asking for help for me, there's actually a chapter in my book all about asking for help and how I, for so long, was like, I got it, I got it, I got it, until life forced me to say, I need help. Full stop. No, iterations or no asterisks of why. I need help. What has it looked like for you in survival mode when you recognize like, I cannot white knuckle this anymore? I need to invite people into my life to support me, whether it's as simple as Uber Eats and getting grocery delivery or as complex as hiring a new team member. Cause you're doing both,
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for me, it required me to slam into a brick wall and be like one breath away from needing to have an inpatient commit. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I was so stubborn in my ways that I just ran until I hit a wall. And interestingly, it's in that breakdown that the help showed up. And I am aware, and I think especially the women watching this, you need to be aware that we assume too much responsibility for things. And when we assume that we are responsible for everything, or we have a story that nobody's going to do it for me anyways, it's easier if I just do it myself, then you're not actually creating room for somebody else to help you. And so when I had a breakdown in my business right when COVID started to hit, I just had a bunch of serendipitous things happen where somebody that we're really good friends with, Brendan Burchard, reached out just to network and say hi and to build community, because he makes it part of what he's doing, which is why he has community. And it was in him reaching out that I realized I really need help. I told him what was going on, and boom, like all of a sudden I'm not alone. All of a sudden I have advice around me. And that has created just a total, complete domino effect in my life where I have made a decision. I'm not freaking doing this on my own anymore. I'm tired of being lonely. I'm tired of having to reinvent the wheel every time. It's so much more fun to even reach out to other people and just ask them, well, what are their thoughts on something that you're thinking about? And so that was the beginning of a completely different way of thinking about things and doing things.
It's funny because I actually remember a Zoom call that you and I were on with Brendan. That was like where I kind of like got to meet you for the first time, and he was just gathering friends to like come together. And one thing that I think is a valuable lesson that I learned from my friend, Ali Stroker, she is in a wheelchair and an incredible actress. Like she is phenomenal. If you hear that girl sing, she just gives you goosebumps. And one time she told me, she said, being differently abled, a lot of times people will think they're being helpful and they're not. And she says, people a lot of times assume like the help that I need instead of asking me what I actually need. And she said, but I have recognized that sometimes allowing people to help is the gift. Sometimes letting people feel helpful is the best thing I could do for them. It's not always about me. And when she told me this, it really reframed this whole idea of asking for help, because we know how good it feels to be the helper, right? Like there is nothing more cool when somebody comes to you and you're like, heck yes, I know how to do this, or I can share this, or I can do this. And it's fascinating because I think so often we feel like asking for help is the weakness, but sometimes asking for help is giving someone else their strength. And I've had to reframe that a lot in my life, specifically too in motherhood, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like tell me this gets easier. Tell me, when you're in the thick of it. But it's been something where I'm like, there are people in my life whose like sole purpose is to be a helper, like people on my team, my mom, just like there's people that desire that. And I think a lot of times the people like us who are white knuckling things, we're missing opportunities to allow people to step into their greatest gifts.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think about it a lot like this lately. As an entrepreneur, particularly in the kind of business that we're running, I am so focused on output.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has helped me ask for more help is to think about how can I get more input? And the other big thing that you just said that you don't want to underestimate is don't make people guess about the kind of help that you need.
Yeah.
Like I was just thinking about selling our house, and when the realtor came through, I just said, look, here's what I need. There's only certain things I can control in this wildly emotional transaction that we're about to go through.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be anywhere near the East Coast when the house is being shown this weekend. There's two things I can control: the flowers, the incense that's burning, and the third, the music you're playing. And I'm like, it would mean the world to me to know that you have lit incense, that you are playing this playlist. Here's the link from Spotify. And I have already ordered all the flowers, picked them up. Here's the list of where they go. And she was like, I would love to do that. And as we were in California when this was going down, I, got little photos from her. Aww. Here I am lighting the thing. Here's your thing here. Here's this here. The music's playing. The doors are open. We're ready. And it just made me exhale.
Yes. Hi, baby.
You got one too? Okay. Now we've got it. We've got a Mr. Noodle here too.
You know what's also so interesting too, and I was having a conversation with a friend about this, is that, if somebody is going through something hard, whether it's a loss or grief or a huge life transition or an identity crisis, a lot of times we just say like, let me know if you need me. And when you are in those states, you don't even know what you need. You don't even know how to communicate what you need. You don't even know how to ask for help. And one thing I've learned is that like, if someone I know is like grieving or something, it's like, hey, I'm going to drop a meal off outside of your door. I'm not even going to ring the doorbell. If you want to see me, I'll let you know when I'm coming. Otherwise, don't even respond. It'll be waiting for you at 5 p.m. Yeah. Like saying very clear things, because it's like when we offer quote help, a lot of times people don't even know how to express what it is. So I love how you talk about being super specific and paying attention to it. Here's what I can control, and here's where I need help. Because like when we are moving through life and we're like, why is nobody helping me? It's like, people don't even know how to step in. And I want to say something, Mel, you have been doing a really good job at asking questions and then sitting with answers. And I think that a lot of times—
What do you mean by that?
So like you'll text me and you'll say, hey, what do you think about this? Or like, hey, I'm moving through this and I don't even know what to do. What would you do? And then you'll circle back and say, I was still thinking about this. And I think a lot of times too, when it comes to help, if something doesn't stick immediately, we let it go, right? It's like that whole thing of just like, nah, not for me. Good for her, not for me. And I think that can work in certain aspects of our lives. But I also think that when we are inviting people's voices or opinions or ideas into our life, there should be some sort of commitment to like, okay, you're offering this help. Let me just sit with it for a little bit and see how it feels. And then we can circle back. And I just think it's been a really cool thing in terms of seeking community, asking for help, but then also giving yourself time to process, okay, what parts of this are for me and what can I let go? And I think that's part of asking for help that gets hard, is because we think no one can do this in the way I can do it. So I'm not even going to ask for their input. And I really think magic happens when people do things in a different way.
I agree with you. So let's model this right now.
Okay.
If you're open.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to start by saying thank you for giving me a compliment. I'm starting to get self-conscious that I look sunburned. I'm in my brand new office here in Vermont,
No,
and
you look
my
beautiful.
my screensaver's pink, and I don't have studio lights in here. And okay, so that aside, I appreciate the compliment. I'm a super fast processor and a very decisive person.
Yep.
And my gut instinct is deadly accurate. And I am in this really interesting moment where I have strategically put balls in motion.
Yeah.
2 years ago around simplifying my life, more ease, a different business model, a investment in a family property in Vermont, all of which is part of a COVID shakeup in my life, and just the fact that I've been building an emergency. And as you know, one of my greatest goals in life is to launch a podcast. I have done them in partnership with Audible, but I am now going into the business, as you have been very successful in, with my own twice a week podcast, with a big partner, and we're producing the whole thing in-house. And so here's what I am trying to wrap my mind around.
Okay.
I don't trust my decisions right now because
why?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because I am in a huge, major life change. We've just sold the house that we've raised our kids in for 24 years in suburban Boston.
You're on Earth. You're untethered right now, is what you are.
Oh, completely. And we have been renovating this home up in Vermont where our son is going to high school. It's a home that my in-laws built. And we've moved in and it's magnificent. So I feel like a fucking idiot for not being happy, but it's not finished. Everywhere I look is literally, there's the corner of my office. Everywhere is untethered. Like my mind has 1,000 tabs open, and my response, and then and it's quiet here. And so my team is in Boston, 3 hours away. My daughter's in Boston. Our house is not going to be, and my mind is racing. And how am I going to do this? And I can't, and I hated working in quarantine. I can't create in isolation. And so I have just been driving myself crazy, going, I should get a studio in Boston. I should do this 2 days a week in Boston. I need to be in person. I need people that know what they're doing. I will implode on my own. And so I just wanted to take your temperature and ask for help.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I've watched this whole thing unfold from the ideation of the podcast through the life changes. And one thing that I've recognized in my life, and something I've called out in your own too, is that this vision that you have for your life, this unhurried, slower pace, this vision is something you hold as this deep desire. Like even when I hang out with you and Chris, it's like you're visualizing this life that is so different from your current life, right? Like slow down time, hanging out in Vermont.
So. Part of me is like, I don't think I want this.
Yes. And you're starting to doubt your own visions. But the piece of that I think is fascinating and interesting, and I tell this story in the book, is like, I had this vision of this little girl and pancakes and all of these things in my season of loss. And there was this question that was asked of me during this visualization exercise. And it was like, what is the most vibrant version of you? Like picture yourself feeling fully alive and engaged with the life you're living, fully present. And in my vision, I was wearing Madewell jeans and a white linen top. And I looked down from the seat I was in while doing that visualization. And I was in old college sweatpants and a t-shirt. And I was like, okay, I can't just manifest the baby, but I could start dressing the part of my most vibrant self, right? I could go on, I didn't even own a pair of Madewell jeans. I mean, I could go on the website and order the jeans and start wearing them to embody the person that I want to become. And I think what's interesting is when you feel so untethered or when you feel so far from like the visualization that you have for your life, there are aspects of it that are absolutely out of control. I mean, look at the world we just navigated. So much of it was uncertain, right? But there are pieces of it that we can control. There are ways to embody the Mel that you envision, whether it's the slow living gardening Mel with Chris or the fast paced Mel. There are ways that you can embody that person.
I actually just got something.
What?
So when you asked me that, the immediate reaction that came was me, like with people.
Yeah.
Coaching about like, in person. Yep. And then I immediately had a visual of us with our kids at this house that we rent in Rhode Island. It's like the most magnificent family time. And the reason we bought this house is our kids actually, we grew up coming here. This was my in-laws' house. This is this is where my daughter's texting the contractors. They're digging a pool going, make sure that you flatten out the lawn so that we can put the tent there for the wedding. So I think because I've been so lonely and pinging and racing, I've never fully been able to integrate the two parts of me. Mm-hmm. And there's a way, it's clear to me I need both. Mm-hmm. What I have not figured out is how do I manage the piece in between so that I'm not missing out. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when does that make sense? I feel like I didn't even say a sentence.
Well, no, that does make sense. And I think too, there's this dichotomy and this realization kind of, if you think about like loneliness is not being fully known, it's because we've compartmentalized so many aspects of our lives that we wear all these different hats, but we shape shift based on where we are so that we're different versions of ourselves. And I feel like there comes this point in time where you're like, I just want to be me, like all aspects of me. I just want to feel at home in myself. I don't want to wonder which version of me has to show up today. I just want to be me. And I think we've gotten rid of this idea of balance because balance is like a moment in time. It's not anything that can be maintained. But now we want to invite in this idea of blend. And so it's like, how can Mel Robbins blend these aspects of your identity and invite that in so that you are not living this life of like someday or when or maybe, but like you're awake to the life that's happening. Because I think you touched on something earlier and it was like the survival mode, the run, you were running the race. And it's almost like you have to train backwards from like the couch to 5K, but the 5K to couch. And you've got to train yourself to slow down, and not in a way that means you need to become the slow living, crock pot soup making, gardening woman of Vermont.
Well, I do garden, although you could. I love my crock pot. I'm a really master gardener, believe it or not.
Yes, but it can mean that you could slow down enough to like recognize where you want that blend to happen and how you can invite it into your life.
Yeah, I think that it's like the racing in between the two is what I've got to figure out how to bring.
Yeah. So if you could share a tool that anyone could implement in a final thought about asking for help or seeking out community, what is something that someone that's watching this could do today to start to invite help or community into their life?
Well, community I'm working on.
Yeah.
And I think one tool is notice how you opt out. So there are lots of opportunities, whether it's attending lectures or taking a class or, just lots of opportunities in your local community to go do something you normally wouldn't do with a group of people. And we don't show up for those things. And that's the fastest way to meet people. That's how you met all your best friends who were in your mother's group. That's how it's how you meet anybody. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing with asking for help is just, you know how like we all have this muscle where if you're stuck as you're doing something online, you're like, oh, I'll just Google it.
Yeah.
There is a human version of that.
Yes. Yes. Whoa. Yes. There's this part in the book, and I think it got cut, but we were talking about how there's this advice that every person should have one person that's one generation ahead of them, guiding them. And then we should be guiding someone that's one generation behind us. And I feel like we've lost some of that. And I feel like there's so much wealth in learning from people who have gone before us, but also learning as we're leading. I know as a mom, like there's so many lessons where I'm like, oh, I don't want Coco to watch screens. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Or I want Coco to feel her feelings. How am I suppressing my feelings? And like, I think that there's this idea here that you said, like, there's a human version of Google. There's so much richness to be had that like a Merriam-Webster can't give us in experience and knowledge and sharing that with others. And I think that that's something that we can all learn to do.
Yeah. And I think one other thing is just like, just kind of what you were talking about, which is you're not like, it's like asking for help. It actually, it doesn't make you weak. It actually makes somebody else feel really empowered.
Yeah. Yes. Mel, I am so grateful for you. I have just really loved one that we've gotten to like travel together and stuff. How fun is that? But two, getting to see behind the scenes and be a piece of your life. And I want you to know anytime you ask me for help, it makes me feel very smart. So please ask me.
You are very smart. That's why.
Well, thank you. Where can everybody find out more about you, get their hands on your books? Give me all the things.
Just go to melrobbins.com. That's it.
Find it all there.
Find it all there.
Mel, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for helping me get my book out into the world. And I am just so grateful to have spent this time with you. I think this conversation is so special and so needed, and just an encouragement too. I think a lot of times people look at people like us and they think we've got it all or we've figured it out. And I think just sometimes being reminded that we're all on the journey together, and together is the key word here in this topic, kind of brings light in a different way.
Sure does. I love you.
Love you too.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.